And I call the member for Clark.
Well, thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, let's be perfectly clear about this fact. If the parliament legislates today and tomorrow to give exemptions to projects and industries, exemptions from the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act, that will be one of the most egregious acts of environmental vandalism this parliament has ever been responsible for. In fact, Deputy Speaker, I would say it would be second only to the Abbott government removing the price on carbon in late 2013, because the enormity of what this parliament is doing here cannot be underestimated. This country already has weak environmental laws, and if the parliament passes this bill, they will be even weaker, because it means that, starting with the salmon industry in Macquarie Harbour on the west coast of Tasmania, but extending to perhaps hundreds of projects that were given the go-ahead more than 5 years ago and have been in operation ever since on a continual basis, none of them can ever be reviewed by any future Environment Minister or any future government. And for the Prime Minister to come in here in question time today and to ridicule the crossbench and to claim that if you care about the environment you must vote for the Labor Party, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Is the member for Grayndler the Prime Minister or the propaganda minister? Because it was just patent nonsense, and it disappoints me, because the member for Grayndler is better than that. I know he's much better than that, and he diminishes himself when he comes in here and says such absolute nonsense. The severity of what this parliament is in the process of doing cannot be underestimated. It is a complete, or it will be a complete failure of governments. What happened, for heaven's sakes, to the promise by the Labor Party in the lead-up to the last election that, if elected, it would strengthen our environmental framework? It turned out to be just a con job. What about public opinion? What about the fact that the vast majority of Tasmanians, when polled, want the salmon industry kicked out of Macquarie Harbour because of the environmental damage it's doing, and the fact that it has helped take the Maugean skate to the edge of extinction? Since when is less than 100 jobs in Strawn, as important as they are, since when are they more valuable than dealing with the extinction crisis? Of course, we must do everything in our power to deal with the extinction crisis. But for this parliament to be in the process of legislating to kill off one of the planet's most prehistoric species, to knowingly do it with legislation like this, it can't be described as anything less than egregious environmental vandalism. What about the groundswell of dissent within the ALP? You can't tell me there's not a lot of good-hearted, intelligent ALP backbenchers who are in barely silence revolt at the moment. What about them? I mean, it's a matter for the Labor Party, but it does call into question the integrity of the Labor Party when it's putting Tassal, Hewen and Petunia ahead of the grassroots membership of that party. And what about the Environment Minister? Now, I've got a lot of respect for the current Environment Minister, and none of my comments are directed at the member for Sydney. In fact, I feel a certain sympathy for the member for Sydney that she's been so ruthlessly sidelined and was made to come in here and read out that speech that she did read out earlier today. I mean, you could just look at the look on her expression, the expression on her face. It was like she was talking while simultaneously sucking on the most bitter lemon this country has ever produced. That is no way to treat a frontbencher. And what about the industry itself? You know, it's a curious thing that the people who are trying to do, in their minds, the right thing by the salmon industry, by carving it out effectively from the EPBC Act, what they're actually doing is hastening the demise of the industry. And I'll tell you why. And that's because the salmon industry in Tasmania, it is an important economic driver, it is a significant employer, and I actually support it. And I actually want it to survive and achieve its full potential. But it will only achieve that potential if it is transparent, if it's very carefully regulated and it's put on a genuinely sustainable footing. And leaving it in Macquarie Harbour to kill off the Maugean skate is not putting it on a sustainable footing. What it's doing is just trashing the industry's reputation even further and hastening its demise. So, if anyone who comes in here later today and is to vote for this bill and claim they're a friend of the salmon industry, they're the complete opposite. Because one day the salmon industry will be on its knees and the people who support this bill will be the ones to blame. And let me talk about the Maugean skate for a moment longer, Deputy Speaker. And I proudly wear a little decoration on my lapel here of the Maugean skate. It is one of the most historic species on the planet, a remarkable creature. It's survived for millions of years. Millions of years. So what does it make of all this talk about us dealing with the extinction crisis when we come in here and we're going to vote on, and seemingly the government, maybe with the opposition, or hopefully they'll see sense and oppose it, they're going to knowingly vote to make one of the oldest species on the planet extinct. I mean, it's just breathtaking, Deputy Speaker. It's absolutely breathtaking. It makes a complete mockery of everything that people say, and they're wringing their hands and talking about the environment and how good they are on the environment. If you care about the environment, you've got to vote for the Labor Party. What bollocks? What bollocks? It's just garbage, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, let's wrap a bit of context around this, because it's not just about Macquarie Harbour and it's not just about the Maugean skate. Because at the moment, Tasmania is confronting the largest mass farmed fish die-off in the state's history. I'm sure by now many honourable members would have seen photos or footage on the telly, perhaps, of literally tip truck loads of dead fish being taken somewhere to be buried on someone's farm, or I don't know, at a toxic waste dump or something. What we're also seeing from video footage that's been obtained, and what we're also hearing from whistleblowers, is exactly what's in these industry documents. Let me tell you something about the character of the industry. Now, this document, it's dated 2014, but it was actually in use as recently as 2018. The relevant company claims there's a newer version of this document but refuses to release it to the ABC when pushed. It's titled Mass Mortality. Now, that sounds very relevant, doesn't it? Mass mortality, as Tasmania goes through the largest mass mortality in the industry's history. And it says, in any large mortality event, as many fish as possible should be recovered for harvest and processing. Any fish, this is any dead fish, that's died in a mass mortality event, which at the moment is caused by the Rickettsia bacteria, any fish in which the gills can still bleed is potentially recoverable. Gross. So what we know from that, and by the way, this document, emergency procedure in the event of significant risk to fish health, says that whenever affected fish are greater than 3 kilograms, this is the dead fish, rollovers, that's the fish that are being recovered for processing, should be bled and placed into ice slurries so they can be processed if appropriate. In other words, at the moment in Tasmania, fish that have died from Rickettsia bacteria in this appalling fish die-off, so long as their gills are still pink, bit of blood in the gills, so long as the fish aren't already rotting and on a beach somewhere, are being put in an ice slurry, taken away and being processed for human consumption. And even the fish that are apparently not infected by Rickettsia and are being harvested and processed, they're not being tested for Rickettsia. And given that it can take up to 2 weeks for the symptoms of Rickettsia to present themselves, and given that we know as a fact that all of the farms and all of the farm sites and all of the pens now are infected with Rickettsia, you can draw no other conclusion than the fish companies in Tasmania are selling and consumers are purchasing and eating infected fish. Now, how on earth does that help maintain the reputation of Tasmania or the reputation of this industry? It doesn't. I make the point again. I want to labour this point. The people that are running a protection racket for the salmon industry in Tasmania are actually going to be part of its demise, because what we should be doing in here is coming in here and making sure we have the very best environmental safeguards possible at a federal level, pressuring the state and territory governments to make sure they have the very best environmental safeguards, that they have the very best environment protection agencies, so that we can have absolute confidence. We're not eating fish that died in a bacterial outbreak and looked good enough and their gills were pink enough to be processed and to be sold at Coles or Woolies. Yuck, yes. It's gross. It's really gross. And that's not as gross, believe it or not, Deputy Speaker, as the images I'm sure some honourable members have seen of the beaches on the east coast in Tasmania and on Bruny Island in recent weeks, of rotting fish carcasses and globules of fish oil up on the beach, which the Tasmanian government said are completely safe, the water's clean, the beaches are fine, but don't touch or eat the fish. Do these people know how silly they look? It would be funny, except it's so serious. It's so serious as far as ensuring the industry is sustainable. Excuse me. So serious as ensuring the environment is protected and safe, and so serious when it comes to the very pointed matter here tonight of the extinction crisis. And this is the context in which we're saying the fish farms can stay in Macquarie Harbour, and the government, and I don't know, I think the opposition, saying they don't give two hoots about one of the planet's oldest species becoming extinct. And why is this all happening, Deputy Speaker? Why is the government and the opposition acting so patently at odds with the best interest of the natural environment, of a threatened species in particular, so at odds with the public interest, so at odds with the groundswell of discontent on the backbench, so at odds with having the best reputation for the industry in the future, for one reason: to harvest a few hundred votes in the electorate of Braddon. It is that crude, that blunt and that ugly that the government is happy, well, prepared to, I should say, is prepared to drive the Maugean skate to extinction because it might improve its chances of winning the northwest and west coast of Tasmanian seat of Braddon. When you think about it in that context, Deputy Speaker, it's all the more ugly. And I suppose there might be the government might hope there's some benefit for in the seat of Franklin and in the seat of Lyons, both of which also have fish farms. But oh, the irony that the member for Franklin is the Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries, and has the tassel factory, has a lot of Huon aquaculture farms down the channel and down the Huon River. Oh, the irony of it, that minister is going to be in here voting in favour of this, even though it is actually hastening the demise of the industry by the trashing of the industry's reputation. I struggle to get my head around this, Deputy Speaker, that one seat, which, by the way, Labor has almost no chance of winning, so the whole exercise even becomes more ludicrous, that they're taking a species closer to the edge of extinction. They are annoying the majority of Tasmanians who want fish farms kicked out of Macquarie Harbour, all to chase some votes that ultimately won't see them win the seat anyway. It's just bizarre behaviour. It's just crazy behaviour. It's inexplicable. But that's what raw politics is like. And to echo my colleagues behind me, that helps to explain why the primary vote of the major parties is collapsing, and why at this federal election, again, a third or more of the country will vote for someone else. They'll vote for people who fight for the environment, fight for the public interest, fight for their communities, fight for rational policies to grow industries, not to kill them. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I hold out some hope that the opposition will oppose this bill, probably for their own self-serving interests by trying to trip up the Labor Party before the election. But I don't care what their motivation is. I just hope they oppose it and vote against it. Thanks, Deputy Speaker.